The copper-sweet tang of blood filled my mouth as I bit down hard on my lip, trying not to make a sound. My fingers trembled against the cold marble countertop, leaving smudges on the pristine surface I'd polished just hours before. Somewhere in the mansion's east wing, glass shattered, followed by thunderous male voices that made the crystal chandelier above me quiver. I wasn't supposed to be here, not at this hour. Not when Mr. Castellano had business. 3 months at this job, and I'd learned the unspoken rules quickly. Clean the 15-bedroom estate during daylight. Leave before sunset. Never enter the study with the heavy mahogany doors. Never ask questions about the men who came and went in expensive cars with tinted windows. And most importantly, never, ever, be caught in the crossfire of Vincent Castellano's anger. But today, my daughter Lily's school had called. Another fever. Another round of antibiotics we couldn't afford. Another late pickup that cost me precious working hours, forcing me to return to the mansion after dark to finish my duties. Single motherhood was a tightrope walk across an endless chasm, and tonight, I'd slipped. The voices grew louder. Heavy footsteps approached the kitchen where I stood frozen, a silver serving tray clutched against my chest like a shield. You think you can steal from me and disappear? The voice was deceptively soft, almost gentle, making the menace behind it all the more terrifying. Vincent Castellano, my employer, the man whose name made hardened men cross the street when he walked by. I'd only glimpsed him a handful of times in my 3 months working here. A tall figure with broad shoulders moving between rooms, the scent of expensive cologne lingering in the air, hushed conversations ending abruptly when I entered to clean. The staff spoke of him in whispers, the young, ruthless heir who'd taken control of his family's business interests after his father's mysterious disappearance. I should run. Every instinct screamed for me to flee, but my legs wouldn't move. Instead, I found myself pressing deeper into the shadows of the kitchen alcove, desperately hoping to become invisible. Another crash, closer now, a man's pained groan. Please, Vincent. It was a mistake. The voice was desperate, pleading. A mistake? A cold laugh. Taking my money was the mistake. But touching my sister? That was a death wish. My hand flew to my mouth, stifling a gasp. The serving tray slipped from my grasp, clattering against the marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire mansion. Silence fell. Complete. Terrible silence. Then footsteps. Deliberate and unhurried, coming toward the kitchen. I scrambled for the back door, but my trembling hands couldn't work the complicated security lock. Panic rose in my throat, choking me as the kitchen door swung open. Vincent Castellano stood framed in the doorway, his tall figure backlit by the hallway lights. I couldn't see his face clearly, just the broad outline of his shoulders in an impeccably tailored suit, and the unmistakable dark shape of a gun hanging loosely at his side. Behind him, 2 men dragged a third, whose face was barely recognizable beneath the blood. Our eyes met for a fleeting second, his pleading, mine horrified, before he was pulled around the corner and out of sight. Vincent stepped into the kitchen, and for the first time, I saw his face clearly. He couldn't have been more than 35, with sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw dusted with dark stubble, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow in the dimly lit kitchen. Handsome in a dangerous way that made my heart hammer against my ribs. Not from attraction, but pure, primal fear. You're the maid. Not a question. His voice was deep, with the barest trace of an Italian accent. I nodded, unable to speak, my back pressed against the cold wall. He moved closer, and I flinched as he reached past me, but he only flicked on the lights, flooding the kitchen with brightness that seemed to expose every frightened breath I took. Name. Again. Not a question, but a command. Elena, I whispered. Elena Reyes. Recognition flickered in his eyes. You have a daughter. Lily. He knew my daughter's name. The realization sent ice through my veins. She's sick, often. My protective instincts surged through my terror. Please, I managed, finding my voice at last. I just came back to finish cleaning. I'll leave. I won't say anything. You shouldn't be here this late. He cut me off, his gaze moving over my face with unsettling intensity. It's not safe. A hysterical laugh nearly bubbled from my lips. Not safe. As if the danger wasn't standing right in front of me, his hands still bearing faint traces of someone else's blood. He must have read the fear in my eyes because something in his expression shifted. He tucked the gun away inside his jacket with a movement so casual it sent another wave of terror through me. This was a man who lived with violence as comfortably as others lived with their shadows. You saw nothing tonight. His voice was quiet, but held an undercurrent of steel. Understood? I nodded frantically. Nothing. I saw nothing. He stepped closer, and the scent of his cologne, sandalwood and something darker, richer, enveloped me. I pressed myself harder against the wall, as if I could somehow pass through it if I tried hard enough. Look at me. I forced myself to meet his gaze, expecting to see cruelty there. Instead, I found something more complex. Calculation, certainly, but also something that might have been concern. Look at me, you're safe now, he said, his voice gentler than I would have thought possible. I don't hurt innocent people, especially not women with sick children. The sudden shift in his demeanor disoriented me more than his anger would have. I remained frozen as he reached out, his fingers briefly touching my cheek where a tear I hadn't realized I'd shed had fallen. You worked too hard, Elena Reyes, he said, his thumb brushing away the tear in a gesture so unexpectedly tender it stole my breath. For too little. Before I could respond, the front door security system chimed. Vincent's posture changed instantly, tension radiating from him as he placed himself between me and the kitchen doorway. Stay here, he ordered, drawing his gun again. Don't move. He disappeared into the hallway, leaving me trembling against the wall. Seconds later, I heard muffled voices. Then Vincent returned, his expression dark. My security team detected police scanner activity near the estate. Someone called in a disturbance. His eyes narrowed. Did you call someone, Elena? No, I gasped. My phone's in my bag, in the staff room. I haven't touched it since I arrived. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded once, apparently satisfied with what he saw there. The police can't find you here, not with what's happened tonight. My heart sank. This was it. I was a loose end, a witness. People disappeared in the city all the time, their bodies washing up in the harbor weeks later if they were found at all. But instead of the violence I feared, Vincent gripped my arm firmly and led me swiftly through a door I'd never noticed before, hidden behind what I had assumed was a pantry shelf. It swung open to reveal a narrow staircase. This leads to my private quarters, he explained as he guided me upward. No one will look for you there. The implications of being taken to his private quarters sent fresh fear coursing through me. I tried to pull away. Please. I need to get home to my daughter. Your daughter is staying with your mother tonight. School called her when they couldn't reach you. The casual knowledge of such personal details about my life stunned me into silence as he led me up the stairs and through another hidden door into what appeared to be a luxurious apartment within the mansion itself. The space was minimalist, but unmistakably expensive. Dark hardwood floors, leather furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights below. Unlike the ornate, old-money decor of the mansion's main rooms, this space felt modern, masculine, and strangely intimate. Sit, Vincent directed, gesturing to one of the leather sofas as he moved to a panel on the wall, pressing buttons that I assumed controlled the home's security system. I perched on the edge of the sofa, ready to flee though I knew there was nowhere to run. Vincent spoke rapidly into a phone in Italian, his voice low and urgent. I caught my name once, and Lily's, sending another jolt of fear through me. When he finished the call, he turned to me, his expression unreadable. The police will find nothing. My men are handling it. What? I swallowed hard, finding courage I didn't know I had. What happened to that man? Vincent's eyes hardened. That man embezzled from my legitimate businesses and harassed my younger sister when she rejected his advances. He's facing consequences for his actions. Are you going to kill him? The question slipped out before I could stop it. A ghost of a smile touched Vincent's lips. So the frightened bird has talons after all. He moved to a cabinet, extracting a crystal decanter and 2 glasses. Would you like a drink? You look like you need one. I shook my head. I want to go home. Not possible tonight. He poured amber liquid into 1 glass. The police will be watching the roads leading from the estate. You'll stay here until morning. Here? I glanced around the apartment, my anxiety spiking. With you? Vincent took a slow sip from his glass. I won't touch you, Elena. You have my word. Somehow I believed him, though I couldn't have said why. Perhaps because he'd had countless opportunities to harm me already and hadn't taken them. Or perhaps because despite everything I'd witnessed, there was something in the way he looked at me. Like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. That didn't feel threatening. Why? I asked finally. Why protect me? I saw what happened. I'm a liability to you. He set down his glass and approached me slowly, as one might approach a wounded animal. When he stood before me, he crouched down to my eye level, those blue eyes searching mine. Because you fight every day for your daughter's survival in a world that doesn't make it easy. Because you work 3 jobs and still come back here at night to finish your duties. His voice dropped lower. Because I've watched you for 3 months, Elena Reyes, and I've never seen anyone more deserving of protection. The words hung between us, heavy with implications I couldn't fully process. He'd been watching me. For 3 months. The thought should have terrified me, but instead it awakened something different. A strange, unsettling warmth that had no place in this dangerous situation. Rest, he said, rising to his full height again. The bedroom is through there. Lock the door if it makes you feel safer. I'll sleep out here. I stood on shaky legs. What happens in the morning? Vincent looked at me for a long moment before answering. His gaze so intense it felt like he was memorizing every detail of my face. In the morning, he said quietly, everything changes. I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be. How that night, the night I should have died, but instead was protected by the most dangerous man in the city, would alter the course of my life forever. I only knew that as I locked myself in Vincent Castellano's bedroom, surrounded by the scent of him and the distant wail of police sirens, I was crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. Morning came with disorienting brightness. For a moment, I didn't recognize where I was. The silken sheets felt nothing like my threadbare cotton ones, and the mattress cradled my body in a way my lumpy second-hand one never could. Then, the memories of the previous night crashed over me. The blood, the violence, Vincent Castellano. I sat up with a gasp, heart racing as I took in my surroundings. Sunlight streamed through partially opened curtains, illuminating a bedroom larger than my entire apartment. Masculine but elegant, charcoal walls, custom furniture in dark wood, and not a single personal photo or memento. It was beautiful but sterile, like a luxury hotel room rather than a place someone actually lived. The events of the previous night replayed in my mind. Had I dreamed it all? But no. I was still wearing my maid's uniform, now wrinkled from sleep. This was real. I slid out of bed, my bare feet silent against the plush carpet as I approached the door. I'd locked it last night, but would it keep out a man like Vincent if he decided to enter? The thought sent a shiver through me. Pressing my ear against the door, I listened for movement outside. Nothing. Gathering my courage, I turned the lock and eased the door open. The main living area of the apartment was empty, morning light flooding the space. On the coffee table sat a tray with a pot of coffee, a covered plate, and a folded note. My name was written on it in strong, slanted handwriting. Approaching cautiously, I picked up the note. Elena, business required my attention early. Help yourself to breakfast. My driver will take you home when you're ready. Your daughter's medicine has been taken care of. Call the number below when you wake. Beneath was a phone number and a key card. My daughter's medicine? What did that mean? Panic surged through me as I frantically searched for my phone, finding my purse placed neatly beside the sofa. 3 missed calls from my mother and a text message. The pharmacy delivered Lily's antibiotics this morning, all paid for. What's going on, Elena? I sank onto the sofa, staring at the message. Vincent Castellano had paid for my daughter's medicine. The same man I'd witnessed orchestrating a brutal beating hours earlier had arranged for a sick child's antibiotics. The coffee on the tray steamed invitingly, but my stomach churned too much to consider eating. I needed to get home, to check on Lily, to process everything that had happened. But first, I needed to call the number. With trembling fingers, I dialed. The line connected immediately. Ms. Reyes. It was Vincent's voice, deep and assured. Background noise suggested he was in a car. "How did you know about my daughter's medicine?" I blurted out, forgoing any greeting. A pause. "I make it my business to know the details of everyone who works for me. But why would you—" "Is that really your question, Elena?" He interrupted, his voice softer now. "After everything you witnessed last night, you're asking why I helped a sick child?" Heat flooded my cheeks. He was right. Of all the questions swirling in my mind, I'd chosen the least important one. "I need to go home," I said instead. "And you will. Marco is waiting with the car whenever you're ready." A brief silence. "We need to discuss your continued employment." My heart sank. Of course, I was being fired. Witnesses to violence weren't kept on payroll, even if they were temporarily protected. "I understand," I said quietly. "I'll collect my things and—" "You misunderstand," he cut in. "I'm not terminating your employment. I'm changing the terms." "Changing—" "What terms?" "We'll discuss it later. For now, go home to your daughter. Marco will bring you back to the estate at 7 this evening." "I can't," I protested. "I don't have anyone to watch Lily at night, and—" "That's been arranged as well. Your mother agreed to stay with her." Anger flared through my fear. "You contacted my mother? You had no right to—" 7 o'clock, Elena." His tone left no room for argument. "Don't make me send someone to fetch you." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, incredulous. In the span of 12 hours, Vincent Castellano had witnessed my greatest vulnerability, sheltered me from police, paid for my daughter's medicine, arranged childcare with my mother, and now was summoning me back to the scene of a crime like some kind of feudal lord calling a peasant to court. What terms could he possibly want to discuss? And why did the thought of seeing him again send such a confusing mix of dread and something else? Something I refused to name, coursing through me. Marco, it turned out, was a mountain of a man with a neck as thick as my thigh and hands that looked capable of crushing stone. He didn't speak during our drive, and I didn't try to engage him. My mind was too busy racing with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. By the time we reached my small apartment building in the city's eastern district, I'd convinced myself that Vincent's new terms involved using me as some kind of drug mule or money launderer. After all, what use would a crime boss have for a single mother who cleaned houses other than exploiting her desperation? "Ms. Reyes." Marco's voice startled me as he pulled up to my building. It was the first time he'd spoken. "The boss says to give you this." He handed me an envelope, thick and heavy. I opened it to find cash, more cash than I'd ever held at once. Easily several $1,000s. "What is this for?" I asked, trying to hand it back. Marco shook his massive head. "For your daughter. Medical expenses." He checked his watch. 7 o'clock. I'll be waiting downstairs. I clutched the envelope as I exited the car, my emotions a tangle of gratitude and suspicion. No one gave away money like this without expecting something in return. The question was, what did Vincent Castellano want from me? My mother's expression when I entered the apartment was a mixture of worry and curiosity. "Elena Maria Reyes," she said in the tone she'd used since my childhood. "You better start explaining why men in expensive suits are delivering antibiotics, and why I got a call from someone claiming to be your employer, asking me to watch Lily tonight." I glanced toward my daughter's room. "Is she asleep?" "The fever broke an hour ago. She's playing with those puzzles you bought her." My mother crossed her arms. "Now talk." I sank into our worn couch, the envelope of cash heavy in my pocket. Where could I even begin? "Mom, my boss is a crime lord who murdered someone in front of me, and now he's giving us money and I don't know why." Instead, I opted for a heavily edited version of the truth. I was working late at the Castellano estate. There was an incident with an intruder. Mr. Castellano was concerned for my safety and had me stay in the guest quarters. The lies felt bitter on my tongue. But what choice did I have? He's been very understanding about Lily's health issues. My mother's eyes narrowed. She'd raised me alone after my father abandoned us when I was 4. She knew the harsh realities of the world. "Elena, men like Vincent Castellano don't pay for a maid's child's medicine out of kindness. What does he want from you?" "I don't know," I admitted. "He wants to meet with me tonight to discuss new terms of employment." New terms? My mother's expression darkened. Elena, tell me you're not getting involved with— I'm not, I insisted, though I had no idea if that was true. It's probably just a promotion or something. Even to my own ears, the words sounded hollow. My mother took my hands in hers, her eyes searching mine. I've seen girls from our neighborhood disappear into the worlds of men like him. They come back different. If they come back at all, I'll be fine, I assured her, squeezing her hands. I just need this job, for Lily. The mention of my daughter seemed to soften her. And what am I supposed to tell her when she asks where her mama is going all dressed up? Dressed up? I'm wearing my uniform. My mother cut me off by handing me another package that had been sitting on our kitchen counter. This came for you an hour ago. Inside was a dress. Not just any dress, but a black cocktail dress in what appeared to be my exact size, with a designer label I recognized from magazines. Beneath it lay a shoebox containing black heels that probably cost more than a month's rent. There's a note, my mother said tightly. I found it tucked inside the shoebox. For dinner. The uniform won't be necessary anymore. My hands trembled as I refolded the note. What kind of employment required a cocktail dress? And how had he known my size down to the half-inch? Elena, my mother's voice was soft but urgent. Whatever he's offering, it's not worth it. We'll find another way. I looked toward Lily's room, where I could hear her soft humming as she played. 6 years old, and already she'd endured more doctor visits than most adults, her immune system compromised by the pneumonia that had nearly taken her as a baby. The medical bills had driven me into debt so deep I'd never see daylight again. 3 jobs barely kept us afloat, and 1 missed paycheck meant choosing between medicine and food. I have to at least hear what he has to say, I told my mother, and myself. At precisely 7 o'clock, I descended the stairs of my apartment building. The dress fit perfectly, skimming my curves in a way that was elegant rather than revealing. The heels added 3 inches to my height, but were surprisingly comfortable. I'd done what I could with my hair, pulling the dark waves into a simple updo, and applied the minimal makeup I owned. Marco stood beside the sleek black car, opening the door as I approached. If he was surprised by my transformation from uniformed maid to cocktail-dressed dinner companion, he didn't show it. "You look nice, Ms. Reyes," he said simply, his first voluntary comment. "Thank you," I replied, sliding into the car's leather interior. "Where exactly are we going?" "The boss is at his city residence." I frowned. I thought the mansion was his residence. Marco shook his head as he started the car. "That's the family estate. The boss has his own place downtown." Of course he did. A man like Vincent probably had homes scattered throughout the city, perhaps the country. Places to disappear to when necessary. As we drove through the city's glittering downtown district, my anxiety crescendoed. Whatever Vincent wanted from me, it wasn't a simple employment discussion. Men like him didn't send designer dresses to their maids for business meetings. Marco pulled up to a sleek high-rise overlooking the harbor, its glass exterior reflecting the sunset in shades of gold and crimson. A doorman immediately appeared, opening my door and greeting me by name as if I were expected. Which, of course, I was. "Mr. Castellano is waiting for you in the penthouse," he informed me, directing me toward a private elevator that required a keycard to operate. Marco handed me a small black card. "The boss said to tell you that dinner will be waiting." With that, he returned to the car, leaving me alone in the marble lobby. The elevator was mirror-lined and silent, carrying me upward with such smooth efficiency I barely felt the movement. I studied my reflection, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. I looked elegant, polished, and terrified. The doors opened directly into a penthouse apartment that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the harbor view, the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. Modern artwork adorned walls in subtle grays and blues, and minimalist furniture in creams and dark woods created a space that was simultaneously luxurious and understated. "You're punctual. I appreciate that." I turned toward the voice. Vincent Castellano emerged from what appeared to be a study, dressed in a charcoal suit that fit his athletic frame perfectly. His blue eyes assessed me with undisguised appreciation, lingering for a moment on the curve of my waist before returning to my face. "The dress suits you," he said, approaching me with the same deliberate grace I'd witnessed the night before. Up close, I could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw and a small scar near his left eyebrow that I hadn't noticed before. "Thank you for the gift," I said stiffly. Though it wasn't necessary, a small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Necessary? No, but appropriate for what I have in mind." My heart stuttered at his words. "And what exactly do you have in mind, Mr. Castellano?" "Vincent," he corrected. "And I believe I mentioned dinner first." He gestured toward the terrace, where I now noticed a table had been set for two, candles already lit, and casting a warm glow against the darkening sky. This wasn't a business meeting. This was a date. The realization sent a jolt through me, equal parts alarm and something dangerously close to anticipation. "I'm not sure what you think is happening here," I began, forcing steel into my voice. "But if you believe buying my daughter's medicine and sending me a dress entitles you to—" "I'm not buying you, Elena," he interrupted, his expression hardening slightly. "I would never insult either of us that way." "Then what is this?" He approached me slowly, stopping just close enough that I could smell his cologne, that same intoxicating blend of sandalwood and something darker. "This is me offering you a choice." "What kind of choice?" "Between continuing to work yourself to exhaustion for pennies," he said quietly, "and accepting a position that would ensure your daughter never wants for medicine again." I swallowed hard. "What position?" His eyes held mine, intense and unreadable. "My personal assistant." Whatever I'd been expecting, it wasn't that. "Your assistant? I don't have any qualifications for—" "You're organized, discreet, and observant. You notice details others miss. You're punctual and thorough." He ticked off the qualities on his fingers. "More importantly, you've already seen things most of my employees never will, and you're still standing here, unafraid." That last part was a lie. I was terrified, but not entirely in the way I should have been. "What would this job entail exactly?" I asked cautiously. "Managing my schedule, coordinating with my security team, handling certain sensitive communications. Accompanying me to business dinners and social functions." He gestured to my dress. "Hence, the wardrobe upgrade." It sounded legitimate enough, but I wasn't naive. "And the real reason? The parts you're not mentioning?" Vincent's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or approval. "Having you close ensures your silence about what you witnessed. It allows me to protect you from those who might think you know more than you do." "You mean the police?" "The police are the least of your concerns," he said darkly. "There are rival interests who would use anyone connected to me as leverage." "So this is about protecting your investment," I said bitterly. He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "This is about protecting you, Elena, and your daughter." The sincerity in his voice was convincing, but I'd learned early in life that men's promises were worth less than the air used to speak them. "And if I refuse, then Marco takes you home. You receive a generous severance package, and we never speak again." He shrugged, the movement elegant beneath his tailored jacket. "But you should know that once my protection is withdrawn, I cannot guarantee your safety from those who might assume you're valuable to me." There it was. The threat beneath the offer, beautifully packaged, but a threat nonetheless. "So it's not really a choice at all," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Vincent tilted his head slightly, studying me. "There is always a choice, Elena. Some are simply more difficult than others." He extended his hand toward the terrace. "Now, shall we discuss the details over dinner? The chef has prepared something special." I stood frozen for a moment, poised between two impossible futures. Return to my life of crushing poverty and constant fear over Lily's health, but maintain what little freedom I had. Or step into Vincent Castellano's world of wealth and danger, binding my fate to a man who had orchestrated violence before my eyes, yet had also shown me a strange, unexpected tenderness. In that moment, with the harbor lights twinkling beyond the windows, and Vincent's blue eyes holding mine, I made the choice that would change everything. I placed my hand in his and let him lead me toward the candlelit table. What I didn't realize then was that I wasn't just accepting a job. I was accepting an invisible collar around my neck, one lined with silk and paid for with blood money. And the man now holding the leash wasn't just offering protection, he was claiming possession. 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of changes so dramatic I sometimes felt I'd stepped into someone else's life. My days as a maid were over, replaced by a role that defied simple description. On paper, I was Vincent Castellanos' executive assistant. In reality, I was something far more complex. I moved Lily and myself from our cramped apartment into a secure building Vincent owned downtown. A necessity for security, he'd explained, brooking no argument. Our new home was a sunlit 3-bedroom with views of the park, filled with furniture I hadn't selected, but which somehow matched my taste perfectly. Lily's room was a little girl's dream, complete with a reading nook and art supplies that appeared mysteriously after she'd mentioned loving to draw. My mother's suspicions hadn't abated, but the private school enrollment for Lily and the specialist who now oversaw her health had softened her opposition. Just be careful, she warned whenever we spoke, her eyes searching mine for signs of distress or compromise. But that was the strangest part. I wasn't distressed. Bewildered, yes. Constantly on edge, certainly. But for the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in anxiety about rent or medicine, or whether the electricity would stay on. Vincent kept me close, true to his word. My days were spent in his downtown office, managing his legitimate business interests, a portfolio of real estate holdings, restaurants, and import companies that served as the public face of his empire. I scheduled meetings, screened calls, and gradually learned to anticipate his needs before he expressed them. The other side of his business remained largely invisible to me, though I wasn't naive enough to believe it had disappeared. Sometimes he would vanish for hours, returning with a hardness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Certain men would arrive for meetings that didn't appear in any calendar, and I would be dismissed with a subtle nod. "It's better you don't know," he told me once, when I'd accidentally walked in on a tense conversation in Italian. Plausible deniability protects both of us. But if he shielded me from the darkness of his world, he enveloped me in its privileges. Designer clothes appeared in my closet weekly. A car and driver were at my disposal. When Lily caught a mild cold, specialists arrived at our apartment within the hour. And through it all, Vincent watched me with those intense blue eyes that seemed to see every thought crossing my mind. He never touched me inappropriately, never made explicit demands, but the weight of his gaze when we worked late, the brush of his fingers when handing me documents, the way he positioned himself between me and other men, it all spoke of an unspoken claim that grew stronger with each passing day. Tonight was another charity gala. The third I'd attended as his assistant. I stood before the mirror in my bedroom, assessing the emerald silk gown he'd sent over that morning. Like everything he chose, it fit perfectly, highlighting curves I'd once hidden under shapeless uniforms. The woman in the reflection was a stranger. Glossy, dark hair swept into an elegant updo, subtle makeup-enhancing features I'd never considered remarkable before, jewelry that cost more than I'd earned in years sparkling at my throat and wrists. All gifts from Vincent, delivered without cards or explanation, simply appearing like evidence of his omniscience in my life. My phone chimed with a text, "Car downstairs in 5 minutes." Vincent never asked if I was ready, he simply expected it, and somehow, I always was. I kissed Lily goodnight, thanked the nanny Vincent had vetted personally, and took the elevator to the lobby where Marco waited beside the familiar black car. "Evening, Ms. Reyes," he greeted me, his usual stoicism softened by what might have been approval as he took in the gown. In the weeks I'd worked for Vincent, Marco had evolved from silent sentinel to something almost like an ally. "Is he in a good mood tonight?" I asked as we pulled away from the curb. Marco's mouth twitched. "The boss doesn't have moods, he has strategies." I laughed softly. It was true enough. Vincent calculated every move, every word. Even his rare smiles seemed deployed rather than spontaneous. The gala was at the city's art museum, the marble steps lined with photographers capturing the arrivals of the elite. As always, Vincent was waiting for me at a private entrance, avoiding the press of cameras and questions. He stood silhouetted against the golden light from inside, tall and commanding in a tuxedo that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. When he turned and saw me, something flashed in his eyes, hot and possessive, before his expression settled into its usual controlled appreciation. "The color suits you," he said by way of greeting, extending his hand to help me from the car. "Thank you for the dress," I replied, our usual script. "It's beautiful." His fingers lingered on mine a moment longer than necessary. "The dress is merely adequate. It's the woman wearing it that makes it beautiful." Heat crept up my neck at the unexpected compliment. Vincent was always polite, even considerate in his way, but rarely openly flattering. Inside, the museum's grand hall had been transformed into a glittering vision of wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light across priceless artwork and the city's most influential citizens in their finery. I recognized politicians, business leaders, and old money families who had controlled the city for generations. And they all knew Vincent. They greeted him with smiles that didn't reach their eyes, handshakes that ended too quickly, conversations that danced around unspoken knowledge. They treated him with the cautious deference reserved for dangerous creatures that might be temporarily domesticated, but never truly tamed. I felt their curious gazes when they thought I wasn't looking. The whispers followed us through the crowd. Vincent's hand remained at the small of my back, a possessive touch that sent both warning and reassurance through me. Castellano, a man's voice, cool and crisp, cut through the ambient chatter. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." Vincent's posture shifted subtly, his body angling between me and the newcomer. "Judge Harrison, I never missed the Children's Hospital benefit. Such an important cause." I recognized the man from news broadcasts, the city's most prominent federal judge, known for his harsh sentences and incorruptible reputation. Indeed. The judge's gaze slid to me, assessing and dismissive in the same moment. "And who is your companion this evening?" "Elena Reyes, my executive assistant," Vincent replied smoothly. "Elena, Judge Richard Harrison." I offered my hand. "A pleasure to meet you, Your Honor." The judge took my fingers briefly, his touch cool and dry. "Likewise, Ms. Reyes. Tell me, how long have you been working for Mr. Castellano?" The question seemed innocent, but something in his tone made my spine stiffen. "Almost a month now," I answered truthfully. "A recent appointment. How interesting." His smile didn't reach his eyes, and before that, Vincent's hand tightened slightly against my back. "Elena has an impressive background in household management," he interjected. "She's proven invaluable to my legitimate business enterprises." The emphasis on legitimate hung in the air between them. "I'm sure she has," the judge replied, his gaze lingering on me in a way that made me feel exposed despite the modest cut of my gown. "Careful, Castellano. Federal employees are watching your enterprises more closely these days." With a curt nod, he moved away, leaving tension crackling in his wake. "What was that about?" I whispered to Vincent. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Politics," he replied, guiding me deeper into the crowd. "Nothing you need concern yourself with." But I wasn't naive enough to believe him. The exchange had been a warning, and I was somehow part of it. The evening progressed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Vincent kept me close, his hand rarely leaving my back or arm. When we separated briefly, me to the ladies' room, him to speak with a business associate, I found myself cornered by two women whose diamonds and surgical enhancements signaled their place in the city's elite. "So you're Vincent's new assistant," said the blonde, her smile sharp as a blade. "He does have a type, doesn't he, Margaret?" The redhead nodded, sipping champagne. "Exotic, pretty, temporary." My cheeks burned. I should get back. "Mr. Castellano will be waiting." "Oh, I'm sure he is," the blonde purred. "Just a friendly warning, darling. Don't get too comfortable. The men in his position, they go through women like tissues, useful until they're not." I pushed past them, heart hammering. Their words shouldn't have hurt. Vincent and I weren't involved that way. But they struck at an insecurity I hadn't even realized I harbored. What would happen when Vincent tired of his strange obsession with protecting me? When my usefulness ended, I found him deep in conversation with an older man, whose security detail marked him as someone important. Vincent's expression was pleasant but guarded, his posture alert despite his apparent relaxation. When he saw me approach, something in his face softened. He extended his hand immediately, drawing me to his side. "Elena, Just in time. Senator Wells was asking about the children's literacy initiative we discussed supporting. I slipped into the conversation seamlessly, as I'd learned to do. Vincent had coached me well on the public-facing aspects of his empire. The charitable foundations, the community investments, all the things that bought him legitimacy and goodwill. It was only later, as we circled the dance floor, that he leaned close to my ear and murmured, "What did those women say to upset you?" I startled. "How did you— Your hands are tense. Your smile doesn't reach your eyes." His breath was warm against my skin. "And I know the particular cruelty of women like the Huntington sisters." I should have been unnerved by his observation, but instead I felt strangely seen. They implied I was temporary, just another woman you'd discard when you tired of me. Vincent's expression darkened. His hand tightened on my waist, drawing me marginally closer as we continued circling the room. "Do you believe them?" The question caught me off guard. Did I? In truth, I had no idea what I was to Vincent Castellano. A responsibility, a liability, a possession perhaps. But what happened when those things no longer applied? "I don't know what to believe anymore," I admitted quietly. Something flashed in his eyes. Anger? Disappointment? It was gone too quickly to identify. "Let me be clear, Elena," he said, his voice dropping to a register that seemed to vibrate through my bones. "What's mine stays mine. I don't discard. I don't abandon. Ever." The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened me. Instead, it sent a forbidden thrill down my spine. In Vincent's world of constant calculation and shifting loyalties, such absolute statements were rare. Before I could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. Men in dark suits and earpieces, different from the security already present, were entering, their expressions grim and purposeful. Vincent's entire demeanor changed instantly. His arm moved from my waist to encircle my shoulders, pulling me against him protectively as he began moving us toward a service exit. "FBI," he murmured, confirming my suspicions. "Time to leave." "Are they here for you?" I whispered, heart pounding as we slipped through the kitchens, Vincent nodding to staff who seemed unsurprised by our passage. "Not tonight," he replied, his tone suggesting he knew exactly why they were there. "But it's better not to take chances." A service elevator took us to an underground parking level where Marco was already waiting with the car. Vincent handed me inside before sliding in beside me, his body tense as he checked his phone. "Take us to the safe house," he instructed Marco, "not the penthouse." Fear clutched at my throat. "Vincent, what's happening? What about Lily? I need to—" "Your daughter is fine," he assured me, taking my hand firmly in his. "My security team is already moving her and the nanny to meet us. It's just a precaution." The car moved swiftly through the city, taking side streets and doubling back occasionally in what I recognized as counter-surveillance measures Vincent had explained to me once. "Is this because of what Judge Harrison said?" I asked, trying to make sense of the sudden danger. Vincent's expression was unreadable in the dim light of the car, partially. "There's been a federal task force assembled. Not for me specifically, but for the network I operate within." His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, an unconscious gesture at odds with his vigilant posture. "I've known it was coming. Tonight just confirmed how close they are." The implications sank in slowly. "And I'm with you, in public. At events, they'll think I'm involved." The safe house turned out to be a secluded lakeside property about an hour outside the city. Modern and luxurious, but with reinforced windows, security cameras, and what Vincent casually referred to as certain defensive features. I didn't ask for elaboration. Lily arrived with her nanny shortly after we did, sleepy and confused, but excited by what she thought was an unexpected vacation. Vincent had thought of everything. Her favorite stuffed rabbit was there, along with new books and art supplies to keep her occupied. "How long will we be here?" I asked Vincent, after I'd settled Lily back to sleep in one of the bedrooms. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the dark lake, his profile sharp against the glass. "A few days. Until my security team confirms it's safe to return." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware I was still in the emerald gown, so out of place in this remote setting. Safe from what exactly? Vincent turned to face me, his expression grave. The FBI raided several businesses tonight, establishments connected to families I work with. He moved to the bar, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. Judge Harrison's warning wasn't a coincidence. He was letting me know I was next on their list. But your businesses are legitimate, I said, accepting the glass he offered. Aren't they? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Some more than others. He gestured for me to sit on one of the leather sofas. Elena, it's time you understood exactly what you've become part of. My heart beat faster as he sat opposite me, his eyes never leaving mine. I think I have some idea. No, he said quietly. You see the surface, the legitimate enterprises, the charity events, the political connections. You don't see the foundation it's all built upon. The illegal businesses, I supplied. Drugs, weapons, gambling. He took a measured sip of his drink. All of the above, once, not anymore. My father built his empire on those trades. I've been systematically moving us into cleaner enterprises, real estate, technology, finance. So you're going legitimate? Evolving, he corrected. The old ways are too vulnerable, too violent, too easily targeted by federal agencies. I studied him across the rim of my glass. But you're still willing to use violence. I saw that my first night. Something darkened in his expression. There's a difference between violence as business and violence as necessity. I don't traffic in suffering the way my father did. But I will protect what's mine. The possessive note in his voice sent a shiver through me. And what exactly am I in all this, Vincent? One of your possessions to be protected? He set his glass down, leaning forward with an intensity that made me press back into the sofa. You've become more valuable to me than you realize, Elena. As an assistant? My voice trembled slightly, as a weakness. The raw honesty in his voice startled me. You and your daughter. The first liabilities I've allowed myself in a very long time. I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond to such a declaration. Is that why you keep me so close? Because I'm a liability? I keep you close because I can't bear to have you anywhere else. The words hung in the air between us, shockingly vulnerable from a man who calculated every move. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. Vincent checked it, his expression hardening. Marco's bringing some of my men here. We need to discuss our next moves. He stood, draining his glass. You should change. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be complicated, just like that. The moment of vulnerability was gone, replaced by the calculated crime boss. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at me. There are clothes for you in the master bedroom. Second door on the right. Left alone, I sat for several minutes, trying to process everything. Vincent Castellano had just admitted I was his weakness. Not his assistant, not his employee. His weakness. And in his world, weaknesses were dangerous things to have. The master bedroom was clearly Vincent's personal space, minimalist but luxurious, with the same attention to quality evident in all his properties. The closet contained not just clothes for me, but an entire wardrobe in my size. Casual wear, business attire, lingerie still with tags from exclusive boutiques. This hadn't been prepared in haste tonight. These things had been waiting. How long had Vincent been planning to bring me here? How long had he anticipated needing this safe house for us? I changed into silk pajamas and a matching robe, then paused at the bedroom door. Down the hall I could hear male voices, Vincent's deep tones interspersed with others I didn't recognize. Making decisions about our lives, no doubt. Instead of joining them, I slipped into Lily's room. My daughter slept peacefully, her dark curls spread across the pillow. One arm wrapped around her stuffed rabbit. Looking at her innocent face, I wondered what I'd done by allowing us to be pulled into Vincent's orbit. Had I protected her by securing her future, or endangered her by tying it to a man whose world was built on power and violence? Morning brought sunshine streaming through bulletproof glass and the scent of coffee. I found Vincent in the kitchen, already dressed in casual attire I'd never seen him wear, dark jeans and a gray Henley that made him look younger, more approachable. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, sliding a mug of coffee across the island to me. "As well as could be expected," I replied, wrapping my hands around the warm ceramic. "Your men?" "Left before midnight. he finished for me. It's just us now. Us and the security detail outside. I nodded, glancing around the sunlit kitchen. How long have you had this place ready for us? If he was surprised by my directness, he didn't show it. 3 weeks. Since the night you accepted my offer. The confirmation of my suspicion should have unsettled me more than it did. You've been planning for this. I plan for every contingency. He leaned against the counter, studying me. Including the possibility that you and Lily would need protection from my enemies. Are they your enemies, Vincent? Or are they law enforcement doing their job? His expression hardened slightly. In my world, there's often little distinction. Before I could respond, Lily's voice called from down the hall. Mama, where are we? Vincent's entire demeanor shifted as my daughter padded into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. His face softened, the hardness melting away into something almost gentle. Good morning, little one, he said, his voice warmer than I'd ever heard it. Lily blinked up at him, still half asleep. In the weeks since Vincent had entered our lives, she'd met him only a handful of times, brief encounters where he'd been unfailingly polite but somewhat distant. Mr. Vincent? She asked, curiosity replacing sleepiness. Is this your house? One of them, he replied, crouching to her level. Do you like it? She nodded, her curls bouncing. It's big, and it has a lake. It does. He glanced up at me, something unreadable in his expression. I thought perhaps you might like to go swimming today. If your mother approves. Can we, Mama? Lily turned to me, excitement lighting her features. Please. The normalcy of the moment, a child asking to swim, a man indulging her, felt surreal against the backdrop of FBI raids and safe houses. Yet I found myself nodding, unable to deny my daughter this moment of happiness. After breakfast, I agreed. Vincent straightened, a genuine smile briefly lighting his features. I'll have the chef prepare something special. You have a chef here too? I asked after Lily had gone to look out at the lake through the windows. Not usually. But I called one in this morning, he shrugged, as if summoning professional chefs to remote safe houses was perfectly ordinary. I wanted Lily's first day here to be special. The thoughtfulness of the gesture caught me off guard. Why do you care so much about making her happy? Vincent's eyes held mine, serious and intent, because her happiness is your happiness. And your happiness has become, he paused, seeming to search for the right words, necessary to me. The simple declaration hung in the air between us, heavy with implications neither of us was ready to name. The day unfolded with a dreamlike quality. Breakfast prepared by a chef who appeared and disappeared with mysterious efficiency, swimming in the heated indoor pool that overlooked the lake. Lunch on a terrace protected by discreet security personnel who maintained a respectful distance. Vincent moved through it all with surprising ease, his usual intensity tempered in Lily's presence. He taught her to float on her back in the pool, his strong hands supporting her small body with unexpected gentleness. He listened to her chatter about school and friends with the same focused attention he gave to business associates, and all the while, his eyes would find mine across the room, something possessive and profound in their blue depths. It wasn't until Lily was napping after lunch that the illusion of normalcy cracked. Vincent's phone rang, and his expression darkened as he answered it, moving out to the terrace to speak privately. When he returned, the casual demeanor was gone, replaced by the calculated precision I'd come to recognize as his business persona. What's happened? I asked, setting aside the book I'd been pretending to read. The federal investigation is expanding. He paced the length of the living room, tension radiating from him. They've frozen accounts connected to 3 of my companies. Fear clutched at my chest. What does that mean for us? For Lily? Vincent stopped pacing, turning to face me. Your accounts are separate, secured. I made sure of that. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. But we need to consider contingency plans. What kind of contingency plans? He was silent for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. I may need to leave the country for a while, until certain matters are resolved. The implication hit me like a physical blow. And you want us to go with you? It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. Yes. You want me to take my daughter and flee the country with a man who's under federal investigation? I stood, anger rising through my fear. To become a fugitive? To be protected, he corrected, his voice hardening. If I leave you behind, my enemies, both legal and illegal, will see you as leverage to use against me. So this is still about protecting your investment, I said bitterly. In 3 swift strides, he was before me, his hands gripping my shoulders firmly but not painfully. This is about keeping you and Lily safe. This is about not losing the only people who have made me feel something beyond power and control in years. The raw emotion in his voice stunned me into silence. I have homes in countries without extradition treaties, he continued, his thumbs moving in small circles against my shoulders. Places where Lily could have the best education, the best medical care, where you would want for nothing except freedom, I whispered. We'd be living in a gilded cage. His eyes darkened. We're all in cages of some kind, Elena. I'm offering you the most comfortable one possible. And if I refuse? His hands fell away from my shoulders. Then I'll ensure you have enough money and security to rebuild your lives without me. But I won't be able to protect you from what comes next. The choice hung between us, impossible and inevitable. Leave everything behind to follow this dangerous man who had inserted himself into our lives, or return to a world of struggle now complicated by our association with him. I need time to think, I said finally. Vincent nodded, his expression unreadable once more. Of course, but not too much time. My lawyers believe we have 3 days, perhaps 4, before the FBI moves directly against me. And then what happens? His smile was grim. Then I disappear, with or without you. The word sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with fear. The thought of Vincent simply vanishing from our lives, of returning to the crushing loneliness of before, was suddenly, inexplicably devastating. I turned away, unwilling to let him see the confusion on my face. When had this man become so essential to me? When had his presence in our lives shifted from intrusion to necessity? Mama? Lily's voice called from the hallway. Mr. Vincent, can we go see the lake up close? Vincent's eyes held mine for one more moment before he turned toward my daughter's voice. Of course, little one. I'll show you where the fish like to hide. As I watched them walk hand in hand toward the lakefront path, Vincent shortening his stride to match Lily's skipping steps, I realized the most terrifying thing of all wasn't the danger we were in. It was how desperately I wanted to follow this man into his world, despite knowing exactly what that world contained. The decision came to me in the still hours before dawn, as I lay awake listening to the gentle rhythm of Lily's breathing beside me. I'd brought her into my bed, needing her close while my mind wrestled with impossible choices. I'd been staring at the ceiling for hours, weighing futures I couldn't fully imagine against a past I couldn't bear to return to. The moment clarity arrived, it wasn't with a dramatic flash of insight, but with a quiet certainty that had been building since that first night in Vincent's kitchen. I slipped from the bed carefully, tucking the blankets around Lily's sleeping form. The house was silent as I padded down the hallway, drawn to a thin line of light beneath the door of Vincent's study. I found him there, still dressed in yesterday's clothes, papers spread across a mahogany desk. He looked up as I entered, surprise flickering across his features before his expression settled into careful neutrality. "It's late," he said, setting down his pen. "You should be resting. So should you." I moved further into the room, my borrowed silk robe whispering against my skin. But I imagine rest is a luxury neither of us can afford right now. Something like appreciation flickered in his eyes as he leaned back in his chair. "Have you decided then?" I took a deep breath. "Before I give you my answer, I need to know something. Ask." "Why me?" The question had been burning inside me for weeks. Of all the women you could have chosen, women who wouldn't bring the complication of a child, women who would understand your world better. Why did you fixate on a maid who saw something she shouldn't have? Vincent was silent for a long moment, his eyes never leaving mine. When he finally spoke, his voice held none of its usual calculation. "I've spent my life surrounded by people who want something from me, my money, my protection, my connections." He stood, moving around the desk until he was directly before me. "The night we met, when you looked at me, there was fear in your eyes, yes, but not greed, not calculation. just a mother terrified for her child's safety. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with unexpected tenderness. Do you know how rare that is in my world, Elena? Genuine emotion, uncomplicated love. His hand lingered against my cheek. I watched you for those 3 months because you fascinated me, a woman fighting impossible odds with nothing but determination and love for her child. The sincerity in his voice made my throat tighten. So I was a curiosity to you? At first, he admitted. Then you became something else entirely. What? I whispered. A possibility. His thumb traced the line of my jaw. A chance at something I'd never thought possible for someone like me. And what is that? His eyes held mine, vulnerability and strength somehow coexisting in their blue depths. Redemption, perhaps, or simply humanity. The raw honesty in his voice stripped away the last of my defenses. This man, this dangerous, complex man who had upended my entire existence, was offering me a window into a soul I hadn't been sure he possessed. We'll go with you, I said softly. Lily and I. But I have conditions. Vincent's posture relaxed infinitesimally, the only sign of the tension he'd been carrying. Name them. Lily's education and well-being come first. Always. She grows up safe and loved, not surrounded by violence or fear. He nodded. Already my priority. I want the truth. Always. No more shielding me from the realities of your world. If I'm going to be part of it, I need to understand it. A shadow passed over his features. Some truths are burdens, Elena. They're burdens I choose to carry, I insisted. No more half-explanations or dismissals. He considered this, then nodded again. What else? I took a deep breath, stepping closer until I could feel the warmth radiating from him. I want to know what I am to you, not what role I play in your organization, not what liability or asset I represent. What I am to you, Vincent Castellano, the man. Something fierce and possessive flared in his eyes. You want the truth? You've become everything. My weakness, yes, but also my strength. His voice dropped lower. My obsession. My salvation. The one person who sees me as a man rather than a reputation or a resource. He cupped my face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the intensity of his words. From the moment you stood in my kitchen, terrified but defiant, you became mine in a way I can't fully explain. And I became yours, though you didn't know it. The confession hung in the air between us, changing everything. I should have been frightened by such possessive intensity. Instead, I felt a strange sense of recognition, as if some part of me had always known this truth. If I go with you, I whispered, what happens to us? Whatever we want to happen, he replied, his thumbs tracing gentle circles on my skin. I won't demand anything you're not willing to give, but I won't pretend I don't want everything, Elena. Every part of you. The honesty in his voice broke something loose inside me, a wall I'd built around my heart since my husband's betrayal and abandonment years ago. Without consciously deciding to move, I found myself leaning forward, closing the final distance between us. Our lips met, and the careful control Vincent had always maintained shattered. His arms encircled me, pulling me against the solid warmth of his body as the kiss deepened from tentative exploration to desperate need. I should have felt out of my depth, kissing a man who had undoubtedly known far more experienced women. But there was something in the way Vincent responded, a reverence mixed with hunger, that made me feel powerful rather than inadequate. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, I saw naked vulnerability in his eyes that I'd never glimpsed before. I've wanted to do that since the first night, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. Why didn't you? I asked, my fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. Because I needed you to choose me, his forehead rested against mine. Not out of fear or obligation, but because you wanted me as much as I want you. The tenderness in his admission nearly undid me. This man, who commanded an empire through force and intimidation, had waited for me to come to him, had given me the one thing no one in his world ever received, the power to choose. I choose you, I whispered against his lips. For better or worse, Vincent Castellano. I choose you." His kiss in response was gentle, almost reverent, before he pulled back. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be busy. We need to move quickly now that we've decided." I nodded, reluctantly stepping away from his embrace. At the doorway, I paused, looking back at him. "When we leave, will we ever be able to come back?" Something like regret flickered across his features. "Not for some time. Perhaps years. And you're willing to leave everything you've built? Your father's legacy?" Vincent's expression hardened. "My father's legacy is violence and fear. What I'm building with you and Lily will be something different." His eyes met mine. Something better. The next 2 days passed in a whirlwind of discreet preparations. Vincent's network mobilized with terrifying efficiency, creating documents, transferring assets, establishing our new identities. I watched it all with a mixture of awe and apprehension, glimpsing for the first time the true extent of his power and influence. Lily accepted our impending adventure with the adaptability of childhood, excited by Vincent's promises of beaches and mountains and schools where she could learn new languages. My mother was harder to convince. I couldn't tell her everything, but I told her enough. "He's in trouble with the authorities," she guessed immediately, her eyes sharp with concern. "You're running away with a criminal. I'm choosing a future for Lily and myself," I corrected gently. "With a man who has proven he'll do anything to keep us safe and happy." She studied my face, searching for signs of coercion or fear. Finding none, she sighed heavily. "You love him." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes, against all reason and common sense. Love rarely concerns itself with reason." She took my hands in hers. "Will I see you again?" "Yes," I promised, praying it wasn't a lie. "And we'll make sure you're taken care of while we're gone." Vincent had already arranged for a generous monthly stipend to be paid to her from accounts the authorities couldn't touch, along with a new apartment in a safer neighborhood. He protected what was mine as fiercely as what was his, perhaps because, in his mind, there was no longer any distinction. Our final night in the country arrived with a brilliant sunset over the lake. Vincent had arranged for us to leave at dawn. A private plane, a carefully planned route through countries without extradition treaties, ending at a coastal villa he owned under layers of shell companies. Lily was asleep, exhausted from a day of swimming and packing her favorite toys. I found Vincent on the terrace, silhouetted against the dying light, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Second thoughts?" he asked as I joined him, somehow sensing my presence without turning. "No," I said truthfully, accepting the glass he offered. "Just processing. Everything's happened so quickly." He turned to face me, his expression somber. "We could still change plans. I could leave alone, make arrangements for you and Lily to—" "No," I interrupted firmly. "We stay together. That's not negotiable anymore." Something like wonder passed across his features, the look of a man unaccustomed to being chosen freely. He set down his glass and drew me to him, one hand sliding into my hair as he kissed me with an intensity that left no doubt about his feelings. When we separated, he kept me close, his forehead resting against mine. "I should tell you something before we leave," he said, his voice unusually hesitant. "About your ex-husband." A chill ran through me. "What about him?" "He abandoned us years ago." "He did," Vincent confirmed, after embezzling from his employer to cover gambling debts. I pulled back slightly, searching his face. "How do you know that?" Vincent's expression was carefully neutral. "Because his employer was an associate of my father's." Understanding dawned slowly, horror creeping through me. "Are you saying—" "Your husband didn't just disappear, Elena." Vincent's voice was gentle but unflinching. "Men who steal from my father's organization don't simply walk away." The implication hung in the air between us. My legs weakened, and Vincent guided me to sit on one of the terrace chairs. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Because we're starting a new life together. Because I promised you truth." He crouched before me, taking my trembling hands in his. "And because you need to understand the world you're choosing to enter." I closed my eyes, absorbing the revelation that my husband's disappearance, which I'd attributed to cowardice and abandonment, had been something far darker. I should have been horrified, should have recoiled from Vincent's touch. Instead, I found myself remembering the fear in Lily's eyes when illness struck and there was no money for medicine. The shame of begging creditors for extensions while my husband gambled away our savings. He left us with nothing, I said finally, opening my eyes to meet Vincent's watchful gaze. Deep in debt. Lily was just a baby, already showing signs of the immune issues that would haunt her. He knew, and he still abandoned us. Vincent remained silent, allowing me to process this truth in my own way. I should be horrified, I admitted. But I can't find it in myself to mourn a man who would desert his sick child. And me? Vincent asked quietly. Are you horrified by me? I studied the man before me, this dangerous, complex man who had killed and threatened and built an empire on fear, yet who looked at my daughter with genuine tenderness and at me with something that could only be described as reverence. I see you, I said simply. All of you. The darkness and the light, and I'm still here. He exhaled slowly, as if releasing a breath he'd been holding for years. Rising, he pulled me to my feet and into his arms, holding me as if I were something infinitely precious. Tomorrow we start over, he murmured against my hair. A new life. Together. As the last light faded from the sky, I leaned into his embrace, accepting both the protection and the danger it represented. I had entered Vincent Castellano's world through fear and necessity, but I was choosing to remain in it through something far more powerful, love, complicated and unexpected as it was. For better or worse, this man who had once told me, "Look at me, you're safe now," had become my safety, my danger, my future. And as we stood watching darkness settle over the lake, I knew that while the path ahead might not be easy, it would never again be lonely. Tomorrow we would disappear together, 3 people bound by circumstances and choices that defied all conventional wisdom. A crime lord seeking redemption, a single mother seeking security, and a child who would never know want or fear again. It wasn't the future I had imagined for myself. It was something far more complex, more dangerous, and infinitely more compelling.